That's what makes our neighborhoods flourish. But we don't want every business in our neighborhood. So if they're bringing in drugs or prostitution and stuff like that, a $500 fine or a slap on the wrist like that is going to do nothing to them. However, a suspension for 3, 6, 9 weeks can actually teach somebody a lesson. And unfortunately, your current commission is very light on issuing those sort of enforcement actions. And previous commissions issued those a little more frequently. And I think if you look back and study the statistics on which ones actually repeated that issue multiple times after a substantial fine as a suspension, it didn't happen again. And so it actually showed that the commission and the community and the city and the state were going to play hardball, and we're not going to just roll over because you're bringing in tax dollars. We are residents, we are also paying taxes, and we deserve to be able to live where we have bought our houses and where we live. Do you not feel that you all are more business friendly than community friendly?
No, I don't believe so. We take a look at each case on the dais with the evidence presented to us. If this to close a business down for not having a community agreement, that's one of the cases, okay, is ridiculous. Okay, and it's got to,
I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm going to let you finish, and then I'll come on.
Is ridiculous. You have to, the preponderance of what they do, we evaluate. Okay, there's no real evidence there. There's drunks on the street outside. Okay, that's one of the big complaints. We can't control that because it's off the premises. You can say, well, we got to clean this neighborhood up. That's a health department issue. That's a Baltimore City issue. It's not our issue.
Your inspectors can witness and have witnessed and have testified to witnessing people coming out of a bar and loitering on the streets.
You don't find them, or we don't close a person down for taking a beer outside a bar. At least I don't.
It's a violation of the law.
What?
It's a violation of the law.
I'm not saying
It
you
is a
should,
violation.
but I'm not saying you should shut them down.
But do you shut them down?
That's how they learn.
It's a violation of the law. If they do it 5 times in a year, yeah, you should shut them down because they don't show any.
We look at every violation. We look at the evidence, okay? The violation evidence, prepared by Tom, okay? We make a decision if the person is in violation or not. Then we look at the history, and we just ask, what is the history of this violation? If a guy has, and we go back right now, 3 years?
I provide 5, and that you evaluate 3.
We evaluate 3 to 5 years.
Is that if it's the same licensee or if just the business in general?
No, it's the same licensee.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, because there are some licensees where they might have had, in a 5-year period, 3 separate violations, but it could be.
And Chrissy,
yeah.
when there's a transfer, I know when the transfer occurred.
I'm just
So
curious.
When you look on the violations page now, you'll see the violation history, and I'm also now noting if there was
So the
recent
normal
transfer.
violation is, what we see is 1 violation or no violations. That's what we take into account in the thing. If a person, let's say a gambling violation, person has a gambling violation, the vice squad goes in, we are called in, they confiscate the machines, they take the money, okay, it's a lot of penalty to the organization, and we could close them down for a week, we could close them down for 3 days, we usually fine them so much a violation for that. We don't close a place down for something like that.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So just real quickly on the gambling machine thing, typically those aren't owned by the bar owner. Those are paid, the people that own those.
They're licensed by the bar.
Not always.
Especially if they're paying out.
Right. So, but don't you believe that there should be less of, I guess, there should be more of an actual written down policy on, okay, X number of offenses equals a 1-week suspension, rather than, today I'm in a bitchy mood, so I'm going to give them a 1-week suspension. Today I'm feeling generous and actually had a good lunch, so you're just going to get a $500 fine. Don't you think that there should be an actual written down policy, more to follow point by point? I mean, it could be as simple as a flow diagram.
It's based on the merits of the case. You can't have a rule that says if 1 gambling machine is a week, 2 gambling machines is 3 weeks.
Why not?
You could, but it's the merits of the case.
Well,
The guy hasn't
goes
had
to
a
the merits
violation.
of the case.
What?
Does that not go to the merits of the case?
Right.
The frequency of the violation, whatever it may be?
We take that into consideration. When we say there's a violation, then we look at the history of the bar or the liquor establishment.
I mean, I think what you're talking about are sentencing guidelines.
Correct.
Is that, what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
So, a lot of those sentencing guidelines are, particularly when you look at criminal law, and I used to be a prosecutor in Baltimore City, so I'm a little familiar with sentencing guidelines. A lot of those are legislated. And the way Article 2B was set up is because it's a rolling 2-year commission. There's nothing set in statute that will require commissioners to follow a set of guidelines that they didn't even create. So the way the law is structured, it's inherent that there's going to be this rollover. And so the reason why that punishment section 16507 was written the way it was, very broad, was because it wanted to give the ultimate discretion to the board to make the determination in terms of what the penalty should be on the facts and circumstances of the case. For instance, and this is just a hypothetical situation, let's say 50 years ago, there's marijuana in a bar, right? Now, let's say 10, 15 years from now, marijuana is legal, right? The sentencing guidelines 50 years ago on a penalty of what would be applicable to a bar are very different than the sentencing guidelines that would be, 10, 20 years from now, marijuana is legal.
Then you include it in the rules and regulations and rewrite the rules and regulations as it becomes necessary
Or you can leave the sentencing, which is what the state legislature did.
to somebody that's appointed by the governor.
But the state legislature, when they made the decision, not the board, when the state legislature made the decision to allow for Article 2B, those very broad sentencing guidelines, or 4 broad sentences, that's what was inherent in this legislation, in Article 2B, is that, it's a 2-year body, and the prescriptions of people that were there 10 years ago are going to be very different from the prescriptions that are in office 10 years from now. Right.
Yes.
I'd like to try to continue a little on the philosophy of your board. And I look at it from, I think, a longer perspective than I'm probably the oldest guy in the room at 80. And I was born in this town and mostly raised in it. And I gotta tell you, there was maybe 65 years since I got aware of bars and drinking. To start with, there have been too many bars in this city. Over those 65 years, there was many a politician who would take a stand at some point and say, we're gonna limit the number of bars because there are too many. And during the period of that liquor board's endurance, the number of bars maintained or went up. That continues to be the case, I believe. If any of us takes the trouble of walking down Broadway and counts the number of liquor establishments selling by any means possible down that way, they've got to acknowledge this is not what a viable community needs. They will find lots of derelicts out there who hang around the bars and sales. And that's not what we need. I know that, as you pointed out, there are all kinds of limitations on what the board can do. But surely the board can be a positive force in encouraging through the ultimate holder of power, the state government, a real effort to go at that basic problem of too damn many bars. I can't hear you.
We approve new licenses based on 2B, okay? Then you have to make a couple $100,000 worth of investment, you have to do this, you have to do that.
I'm familiar.
Okay? As of existing bars, we have no control over that, except if they do violations. I can't go in and say, I want to shut down half the bars on Broadway. We just can't do that.
No, but you had the opportunity when those bars had in violation, and if you had taken anything like a perspective of the community on the benefits of that bar, you'd have closed them, if not on the first penalty, on the second one. But they don't get closed.
Hold it.
You haven't closed a damn one,
I don't think, I've looked on one violation this year, since I've been on the board, that had multiple violations on the rap sheet, or at the back end. The maximum we've had is one violation. You're gonna close a bar down for one violation. You're gonna say, well, the community wants to do it. Well, that's a legislative issue. It's not my issue. It's not the board's issue. We can penalize them according to the law, okay? And if the person has a violation, and we look at transfer of licenses very hard to make sure that the transfer is going to a legal entity that is a responsible legal entity, okay? And people will say, no, that's the first time. The first time I looked at one application, it was coming from New York and it was pure mafia money, okay? Pure mafia money. And we stopped that acquisition of that license. But that's what we do. We have to look at the facts and make the judgment against the administrative law that we have to enforce. Thank you.
So I have a question for both you and Tom, actually. And it's a multi-part question, what would you call when a police officer is driving down the road and he sees somebody swerving the car and speeding or just driving recklessly? When he pulls them over, what would that be called?
Well, yes, reckless driving.
Okay, so what is he doing when he's doing that? What is the process of what he's doing?
Who's doing?
The police officer that pulls somebody over.
He will test you for alcohol content.
I'm not saying that the person's necessarily drunk. They could be drunk. They might just be driving poorly. What is he doing? Is he just doing it for fun? Is he enforcing a law? And this is why I'm asking this question, because what happens when you have an inspector go to a bar who sees somebody walking out with a beer in their hand? It's not allowed to be outside.
Illegal. It's illegal.
It's illegal, but what is it called? What is he do? What is that inspector doing if they issue
We're in
them?
violation for that person.
Is
That
it
bar,
in?
we get a violation.
But what gives them the power? Are they enforcing a law?
They're enforcing the rules.
So
of law.
how does that not make the liquor board a regulatory agency? How does that not make them an enforcement
We've had
agency?
this debate.
We have, but I'm getting back to it
We've had
because.
the debate of, should we be a police enforcement?
Hold on,
Should-
I'm not-
They
I'm not
actually
asking
said
you-
we should carry guns.
I'm
You
not,
think
I
one
don't
of
think
us
you should carry guns. I think that's ridiculous. But I think if your inspectors feel like they need to go to a bar where they feel like they need to have a gun or a police officer with them, that's a pretty good indication that maybe that liquor license shouldn't be there. But this is beside my question. The reason I'm asking about enforcement is because you have repeatedly said, and multiple other people that are involved with liquor board have repeatedly said, we are not an enforcement agency. You're a regulatory agency, which by nature, you are enforcement of the law that you are in regulation of.
Yes.
So by you saying that, you are discouraging people in the community from going to the liquor board and saying, hey, you know what, this is happening in my community. And yes, they should make 301 reports and they should make 911 reports. But as you may or may not know, 301 and 911 are both unreliable when it comes to this. If police show up to a place and are like, you know what, this is a liquor board violation, and I can say this firsthand because I know many officers, including Lieutenant Colburn, when he's gone to liquor board inspectors and said, you know what, we need a liquor board report, we don't need a police report for this. And then your liquor board inspectors go back and say, well, you know, actually we need a police report because we can't enforce this. If it is liquor law, the liquor board inspectors and the liquor board absolutely have the power to enforce it. So yes, while you may think you're not an enforcement agency, you are in the literal sense of the fact that you are there to enforce the law. Whether it comes to a licensee submitting a license to you and saying, hey, this is my license, you have the power to enforce the law with that. So by you saying that you're not an enforcement agency is absolutely wrong, and it is absolutely discouraging to people that have issues with this stuff, and that is why I keep bringing it up.
Well, let me just say one thing. When we go into a liquor establishment, we see a violation, we write it up.